Hello, family and friends. I trust that you're fine this May. The awareness that is done on mental health in May, although what you do, what I would advise is now when you get to this stage of being hooked on this information as it's getting interesting and all that, is you dive into research, because now you're seeking understanding, and then you're also seeking wisdom, you're seeking discernment, so that you can see what to do. So for you on this at this stage, I have the fruitful Sarah Jakes Roberts on her sermon on owning your lessons, and then I have also Pastor Charles of the Watchers Hub Network on how to use your devices to help in research and all that. Then I have, as you continue researching, then I also have Pastor Stephen Fatak. If the pronunciations of the names is wrong, please, I apologize. But then we're focusing on the awareness that we're creating. So we have Pastor Stephen Fatak on his sermon on fighting the battle within, wrestling with yourself. Remember, now you're at the point of researching. Then we have Oprah Winfrey on an interview with worldly renowned psychiatrist Dr. Shafali, a clinical psychologist, to be precise, on the more research on this mental process in a human being, and then more so in terms of parenting. And then we have Dr. Joyce W. Charles on now the spiritual aspect of who are you as a human being and what's your purpose. Then we continue from there. Please feel free to just subscribe, like, hit the notification button, and share this channel, the YouTube channel, which is the Mental Health Fitness Journey Club. Then I'll also share down there a link on our Facebook group, which is also under the same name, the Mental Health Fitness Journey Club. So let's listen to Oprah Winfrey's interview with Dr. Shafali. Let's listening to Pastor Charles of the Watchers Hub Network here in Kenya, from Kenya, and then also Dr. Joyce W. Charles, then Stephen Fatak, and then Sarah Jakes Roberts. Then we take it from there as we're about to almost wind.
I can't stop now. I can't stop doing this.
Dr. Julie Smith. She's a clinical psychologist with more than 3 million followers. How is she dealing with stress, pressure, burnout, overload?
We're subjected to these kind of ideals. We're trying to do everything perfectly, and it's impossible. Those things that we end up doing habitually are the things that work instantly. Going to the fridge or grabbing the wine or whatever it is. And actually the things that tend to work in the long term are hardest in the moment, like sitting with it and feeling it and using skills to get yourself through it. I just love that therapy. It's great for looking at the patterns and the cycles that people tend to feel stuck in their relationship. And it's incredible how life-changing that can be for people.
Without further ado, I'm Stephen Bartlett, and this is The Diary of a CEO. I hope nobody's listening, but if you are, then please keep this to yourself. Could you do me a quick favor if you're listening to this? I had some time to read as much as I could about your story, and with a lot of my guests, there's often tons of backstory online about their personal lives, their upbringing, their childhood. That didn't seem to be the case with you. And I think one of the things that, from getting further and further down the road with your story, I thought was really wonderful was typically when people are successful and they reach the levels of success that you have in their disciplines, we tend to want to point to some kind of anomalous childhood where something traumatic or really significant happened that shaped them and made them obsessive or overly dedicated or passionate. Was that the case for you? What was your childhood like? Tell me.
No, there's no sort of major trauma that triggered my kind of mission to do any of this, or even, I had a few questions recently about, why I was even interested in psychology. And actually, I've always been fascinated by people, by humans. And I read a lot as a child, but actually everything I read was about normal people in normal life situations and sort of development of how people become who they are. And that's always fascinated me. And actually, I started studying psychology because I found it really interesting. It just, there was a new A-level available at my school, my college. And so I thought, well, that sounds okay. That sounds great. Let's try it. And I was just fascinated by it. And so I kind of went with that and went to university because everybody else was going. And it seemed like that was what you do now. And so psychology felt like, an interesting thing to do. I had no idea really what jobs could be at the end of it. Follow your interest, do the thing that excites you or that inspires you, and you don't have to have this epiphany moment that transforms your life and makes you passionate about doing what it is you're doing. If you follow your interests, you're much more likely to end up somewhere in a job that you love.
Having done this podcast for quite some time now, it's almost a bit of a psychological, I don't know, it's almost a bit of a psychological journey with each guest, but sometimes it also feels like therapy. And I'm starting to learn more and more about humans generally, the more and more of them that I get to speak to, especially because I tend to be speaking to people that are considered to be anomalies. In your experience, having understood the nature of the human mind and how we think and how trauma and all of these things and mood and decision making are all intertwined together, what have you learned just more broadly and generally about the nature of human beings and how we come to be the way that we are? I know that's a big question, but it's one of the ones that I actually, I'll tell you what I've learned, okay, because then maybe that will give you a bit of an indication as to what I'm referring to here. One of the things I thought before I started doing this podcast and speaking to people a lot was I thought we were all just so fundamentally different. And I thought that my job would be to find out all the ways that all these successful people are different. But I think over time, I've actually learned the opposite, that fundamentally humans are quite predictable in terms of how, if you poke it like this, typically like X, Y, or Z will happen.
Yeah, I think there is a sense of predictability, isn't there? And certainly you would go with that in terms of the sort of work that I do and working in therapy. There are certain patterns that can be predicted, and that's where your models of therapy develop, because you can predict that if certain things are happening, then it might develop into this pattern. But actually, while there is predictability, people will always surprise you as well. So even as I work with people one-to-one in therapy, no two people are ever the same, and you can never assume anything, because everybody has that unique story and the unique set of experiences that they've been through, and their unique set of coping strategies and how they'll then get through that. So I think predictability to a degree, but never assume anything, because people will surprise you.
And how did
You're gonna have to put on your big boy drawers and get back out on the front line, because I'm not finished with you yet. I'm not finished with you yet. Demons aren't done trembling. The devil is not done being destroyed. And I called you to break something in the earth. You don't get to just quit. I know you tired. I know you bruised, baby. I'm tired too. But I'm called to this. And I don't get to just back down. You don't get to just quit. Yeah, they probably talking about you. Yeah, you probably in Paris. But we don't have a high priest who doesn't understand what it's like to be talked about, to be humiliated. And if he didn't get off the cross, you can't get off yours. Sorry, but not sorry. Because how can we go to war for a generation if we're teaching people if it gets hard, you can back off. If it gets hard, do something else. What the enemy has to do is get you You think all the enemy has to do is wage war with you. All the enemy has to do is make you indifferent. Because if you are indifferent, you will be stagnant. And if you are stagnant, you have no power, you have no authority, you have nothing to reach towards. You don't get to just take this loss. You got to eat this loss until this loss becomes a lesson. Because if you eat this loss until the loss becomes a lesson, when you get tested again in this area, you won't make the same mistake twice. Because you see, I ate a loss like this before, and I learned my lesson that even though I ate this loss, I'm not going to do the same thing over and over and over again. God, I may have failed you once, but if you tell me you're calling me again, if my back is up against the wall again, I'm going to own the lesson that allowed me another chance. God is not just testing you to fail you. God is testing you so that every loss becomes a lesson. And when that lesson becomes yours, you can own it in front of the very enemy that made you lose it in the first place. They're trying to threaten him. See, you got to know that there are many people trying to teach you. And not everybody trying to teach you is trying to get you closer to who God has called you to be. So you got to be careful who you allow to teach you when you're trying to own the lesson that God gave you, because somebody's trying to strip you from the lesson that you need to own. And Peter has enough wisdom and insight to understand that you're not even the person giving me the test. You just look like the person testing me. But I know, because I know that this isn't even about you. You got to look beyond the circumstance and understand that this looks very similar to something that I failed at before. This looks very similar to something that got in before. And I could take on the lesson of my enemy and shrink. I could fall for the lesson of my enemy and be prideful and boastful. I could fall for the lesson of my enemy but lose my family. Because the real test wasn't whether or not you could be like the fellas. The real test was whether or not you could be a husband. The real test wasn't whether or not you could be successful. The real test was whether or not you could maintain your integrity. That wasn't the real test. You got to make sure, what's the real test here? Because I want to own this lesson. And when God gives you the grace to learn again after you've lost, you don't just give that up without a fight. When God tells you you're still worthy regardless of what happened to you, you don't just give that up without a fight. I'm not talking about when you heard it. I'm talking about when you learn it, when you own it, when it becomes a part of who you are. You see, I fought for this lesson. Somebody does think you're arrogant. You're not arrogant. I just fought for this lesson. It's not that I don't care. I just fought to finally believe that I am who God says I am. It's not that it doesn't hurt me. It's just you can't have my lesson. I'm trying to own this lesson. My family's depending on me owning this lesson. My children are depending on me owning my lesson. You just can't take it. You can leave me, but you can't take my lesson. You can hurt me, but you can't take my lesson. I may be crying, but you can't have my lesson. I fought for this baby. I bled for this baby. I cried for this baby. I spent 10 years depressed for this baby. I tried to blow my brains out, baby. You can't just take this lesson. I believe that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And yes, I went through the divorce. And yes, they may have touched me, but I fought to own this lesson. And you just can't take it when you walk out the door. This is my lesson. This is my lesson. God gave me this lesson. Jesus went out of his way. He had anything he could be doing in 40 days, but he went out of his way to teach me this lesson. Nobody in your family was saved, but Jesus went out of his way to make sure you know that I love you, that I call you my own.
I always say that most people grow in the matatu. If you have never known about life, sometimes it's good. Some people say that earphones are not good when you're in a matatu, unless you're probably having your eyes open. I always say this: make your phone and your earphones the best friends that you have. plug in and put summons in your phone. There's a system how you can download your YouTube videos and download them and have them in your phone. Eliminate these love songs. They never get us anywhere. The only thing that they do is that they lead us into worse things. When you listen to this, what is it called? This guy by the name of, I don't know who, by those days we used to listen to Joe. And so when you're listening to Joe, when he says, I'm going to sweep you off my feet, when you see someone you feel, really, I am sweeping off my feet. Some of these things, they just make us crazy and lazy. But if you can plug some sermon and replay that sermon, what you're doing is that you're building your faith, because we know that faith comes by hearing. And so every time that you have your earphones hearing, you are hearing and you are hearing and you are hearing, that thing enters into your system. Scriptures enter into your system. And when you need them, you release them like arrows. And so the other thing I also do is that there's a Bible called Tekata or something. That Bible is very nice. It has audio. So you can you can click on it and press the play button, and that Bible is going to, as you're following, you will be able to see what the system is reading, and you will be able to also hear.
Two peoples. One will be stronger than the other older will serve the younger. Give me some more. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. Right now, there are twins in the womb of your mind, your heart, your desires. I'm not preaching this in an allegorical way. It said it in Ephesians. I'm illustrating it. I'm illustrating it to you. That's exactly what Paul said. And I want you to notice, this might be the best part of my sermon, and I saved it too late, so you probably won't even hear it. But it didn't say, make sure you don't take off the new nature and put the old one back on. The old one was the first one that is mentioned, which means that your natural state of mind is not your true nature. In order to put on what God gave you, you have to take off what he didn't. And stop accepting any old attitude as being you, because that's not you. Oh, I notice it. There I am again blaming people. I notice it. There I am again catastrophizing. I notice it. There I am again, but I'm not it. I notice it, but I'm not it, because I have learned the truth in Jesus and a new way of life. So I'm taking that off and putting this on. I'm growing out of that old one, and I'm growing into my new one. The future me is God's familiar me. That's what I'm becoming. And since my life had its origins in the mind and heart of God, nothing can stop it. Just ask the stone.
Awakening that you had that when you were raising your own daughter, you had like a meltdown, right?
Many
meltdowns. She's now 21.
Yes.
So do you feel a sense of liberation for her and liberation for yourself also?
Well, let me tell you, the journey never ends of this ominous ego that keeps showing up. So even though my daughter's old and one would think Dr. Shefali should have a grip on her ego, it just sneaks up onto us. So I never want to give parents the illusion of perfectionism. And instead of perfectionism, I go for evolution. So even today, when I see the ego roar, I have compassion for myself. And I want parents to have compassion and a great sense of humor about this unrelenting ego of theirs, and look at it as another moment to evolve.
The most challenging, but teenage rebellion, is it inevitable? Is it an inevitable part of life?
And healthy, and delicious, and oh so scary for the parent who wants control.
And one of the things you write on page 59 is that while we feel they're rebelling against us, we need to realize they're finally doing something for themselves.
They are only rebelling against our tyrannical control. They are only rebelling against our godlike complex and seeking the God within themselves.
Wow. I think that's a very challenging concept for parents of teens.
Yeah, they're like, forget that.
Yes, yeah.
Who cares?
Yes.
Right. You do as I say.
You do as I say, because they don't want to give up the control and also feel like this is when you need to have more control.
And on the contrary, this is precisely when we need to release them into their own inner empowerment.
Mercy on them and to our God, for he will freely pardon them. For thoughts, yes. For he will pardon, he will forgive you. My mother would say it this way, for thinking like a fool. Wasn't she good for telling you that? You're thinking like a fool. Yeah. She didn't call us a fool, but she said, you're thinking like a fool. That don't make no sense. You're thinking like a fool. Because she understood parenting is about teaching how to think. You can't teach a child how to think when your answer is, because I said so. So I have a tendency when I'm frustrated with any individual to say, what were you? Yeah, because I can't understand how you did what you did. I have a problem with your ways, but the root of your ways is in your thoughts. Anytime you see somebody acting a certain way, the action is the fruit of their thinking. What were you thinking? Then God goes on and says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts. That's why I want you to forsake your thoughts, because my thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways. Now we keep seeing this ribbon tied between thoughts and ways. Thoughts and ways. His thoughts justified by his ways. Your thoughts justified by your ways. God declares unto you, I'm not thinking what you're thinking. And my ways of getting you there are not your way. I swore I was going to bless you, but I didn't tell you how. I swore I would bring you out, but I didn't tell you through whom. I thought it was going to come through the bishop. I thought it was going to come through the music. I thought your thoughts, get them out of the way. Get them out of the way. If you can surrender your thoughts to God, what you think about it, rather than building a shrine around your opinion and worshiping at the altar of that is fragile, and open yourself up. That's what I surrender really means. I surrender all means I surrender what I had in mind.
Are not deep enough for that in Christ. The religious backgrounds we come from, they are not deep enough for really us to be able to identify who we are or get our identity in Christ. So we begin to live like normal human beings. But I want to submit to you today, you are not a normal human being. That may sound strange, it may sound superstitious, but hear me and hear me well. You are not a normal human being. The only reason you are a human being is because you have that body. Alright? And you're found here. You're here for a reason and a purpose. Now, I want to begin where we began yesterday so that you're able to carry everybody. I'm not doing a recap as per se, but it's going to be the build-up from where we stopped yesterday, even as you talk about how to change our lives in 60 days. So, Revelation 17, I'm going to read verses 4, 5, then verses 7, and then 9. That is the Revelation chapter number 17, verses 4, 5, 7 and 9. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Verses 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. That is actually in capital letters. And the angel said unto me, wherefore didst you marvel? I tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carried her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman seated. I want to repeat that again so that you understand where we are coming from. Now, the angel of the Lord gave interpretation to John for him to understand what is this woman that he's seeing. So the interpretation was in verses number 9. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads. Now, this beast had 7 heads. They are the 7 mountains on which the woman seated. Now, so that is the system of Babylon and the rulership of Babylon. Every mountain of influence is very important. First of all, you have to understand, because no nation will be able to run if there are no mountains of influence, because we revolve around that. Economy, families, education, media, and all that is what is the 7 mountains of influence, and the world revolves around it. Not only that, finances revolves around the 7 mountains of influence. In fact, if you are not involved in any, money will not come to you, because money is only authorized to revolve or to be exchanged within those mountains. And so you cannot be a believer and say that you're not going to be involved in that. It is so Jezebelic, it is so demonic. Now, we are being brought into this world with a reason and a purpose for us to be able to colonize this world for Christ. But then we have to understand that we are not only going to be able to do that when we are only at the mountain of religion. We have to enter every other mountain, because we are wired differently. Some of you are called into the ministry, some of you are called into education, some of you are in family, that is where your calling is, some of you are in art, some of you are in business, others are in different areas of empowerment that God has given you as a gift, or maybe it's a talent, or maybe it's an empowerment of the Holy Spirit. And so we as people of God, we have come into this realm as undercover agents. That is why we must purpose and do anything in our power to not just remain around the 4 walls of the church and look at the world from the inside. We should be in the world, because remember, number 1, we are the salt of the world. So if a specific mountain is lacking a believer, at the end of the day, there will be no salt. And so that is to explain why, if you look at most of the things around the world, you see a lot of demonic activities, because they are lacking salt, they are lacking light. So if
Wow, awesome, isn't it? That, yeah, apparently all you had to do is push, seek, and then you would find others who have been doing the work on becoming mentally fit in different avenues and in different artistic ways. And
missing, you can go to God and collect it back if you think that's what we are using to buy our Range Rover. Now we are shouting and shouting. When I was very young, I think I was about 18 or so, I was in a bus one day. You know these public buses? I was going to see my parents. And this bus conductor, very elderly, I was wondering in my heart, what was this man doing as a bus conductor? And in Nigeria, they will load everything. The conductor will not have a space to sit, so he will sit on top of the battery or something. And then there was a man that sat. I was there too. And I cannot remember what happened. They started this argument and, and this man, well-dressed, looking very good. You will know, those are the people that went to St. Andrews. You know that kind of thing. I don't know what St. Andrews is here, like Harvard. Cambridge, okay? So as he was, they were talking and all that. This bus conductor looked at the man and said, I'll do a transliteration. Yes, a man sable. See how he's speaking grammar. Is it grammar? This man replied and said, when they were jingling, school bell, where were you? The conductor went, shh. Now that we are shouting that you should buy shares. Now that we are shouting and teaching you how to be wealthy, so that tomorrow you will not go online and be abusing people that had it. Now we are telling you. Now that they are jingling the bell, you better hear. I love this church. You are
They're keeping you accountable to who they know you should be and are working. You done company that will be your squad encouraging you. You said you want 50 million in 5 years. Let's get this done, sister. How are we doing this? Where did you say you've reached? Have you set up the account? What have you done? Are you understanding me?
accountability.
But not let's go and spoil, let's go and they're keeping you accountable to who they know you should be and are working towards. All right? They're not putting you in a situation where you have to go through rows and putting pressure for you, Paka, you have to take loans and, you know, because of trying to stand up to who they are. You're trying to keep up with these Joneses and buy the cars they're buying, and maybe those cars are given to them. Maybe they're not their cars. Maybe, you know, you don't know.
Maybe there's a loan.
Maybe there's a loan. Instead of them encouraging you towards being at the place where you become financially free. Who are you keeping company with?
Have you had situations in your life where you've had to exit some company for the sake of you getting to where it is that you wanted to get to?
Yes. And it's not Xing like that. I never want to be your friend. It's just spending more and more time with people who are reading more, who are growing, because they challenge me. And I find I'm drawn towards those kinds of people. People who are stuck, I just find...
Is that because you yourself then are not like that? Have you... Okay, let me ask it like this.
Okay.
Maybe there is something that you're aspiring to, but you're not there. For example,
No, I'm not.
you're stuck. You are from the mentality of stuck, and like begets like. How then are you able to force yourself to be in a different environment so that you can then get this understanding?
Ask that question again. How can I force myself?
Okay, let me just ask it like this. What are some of the radical decisions that you have made to get them into good company, or the company that you want?
So the company that I want for my current target is not within my current friends. So I have spoken to somebody, met them, they're not my friend. And I said, every month we're going to have a date. This is the goal I have, and I want you to hold me accountable. The other company I have is I drop my children very far in school, and so I turn on the voice of a man called John Maxwell, because the other area I want to grow is in my leadership. And John Maxwell, I listen to him and he tells me, you need to communicate better. You need to be more accountable. So there's things that he says every day in my ears that I work towards becoming. But I don't just sit there and be like, oh, I don't know. And I want to constantly grow. So I listen to people every moment that I can who are these things about my marriage that I'm wanting to improve and grow in. And so I will read around, what do I need to improve as a person? How can I be a better wife? How can I be a better person to my husband? Because the more that I give, the more that I receive. I cannot sit with people who will tell me how their husband is so bogus and useless, because that's how I'm going to think. Are we together? So it's in different areas. Yes. Parenting. I want to be a great mom. I want to spend time with my children. I want to be able to give more towards them. I want to be able to mentor them and be present as a mother. I can't hang out with women who are just like, you're wasting so much time. Because I will see it like that.
You're so powerful.
He knew that you back up your words with your actions. And again, that's how values are transferred. In fact, I make a statement in mentoring that I want to stop here now and just share with you, because it's a very important statement. And the statement is this: who mentors you is as important as what they say. Obviously, what they say gives you insight and information and knowledge and wisdom, but But the contagiousness of the spirit of mentoring is based on who mentors you. And I have just discovered that that spirit is contagious. And as you are teaching values and leaving a legacy for the next generation, who you are is as important as what you say. You can't not separate the two of them. So, if you would allow me just, I don't know, for a few minutes today, I would just like to share with you some of the lessons that my father taught me. Lessons that have been life-changing to me, and maybe they'll help you. I hope so. For example, my father taught me how to add value to people. I don't know of anyone that loved people and added value to people more than my dad. I watched him. I watched him care for people, encourage people, lift people, believe in people. In fact, when I graduated from college, as I was getting ready to go into the ministry, I asked my dad to give me some advice. I said, Dad, help me to get started well. And the advice that he gave me that day was life-changing and has stayed with me throughout all of my years of life and ministry. He said, John, if you really want to be successful, if you really want to help people, and you really want to make a difference, he said, do 3 things every day. He said, value people, believe in people, and unconditionally love people. He said, if you'll do those 3 things, people will be drawn to you. And he taught me that day that when you increase people's lives, they're drawn to you. If you decrease their lives, they fall away from you.
If I'm not willing to give up the profit, you see, you cry for the pain, but you are not talking about the benefit. It's not a loop. If you're doing it again and again, there's something you're getting out of it. And you are not willing to give that up. You know why somebody that is suffering will not give up? If not, how will you talk about you? Oh, my husband beat me, or they're torturing me. That's the only way you get attention. That's your benefit. Think about it. Really think about it. Nobody is really suffering, you know. If somebody is really suffering, the struggle to get out of the suffering is total. We say a poor country are suffering of no money. Do you see them struggling to be rich? They're benefiting being poor. They got time off after 5 o'clock. They can go to the bar, drink beer. They can watch movies, some hero in the movie. If they're really suffering, they'll work 18 hours a day. I sometimes think poor people live a richer life than the rich people. Rich people don't have weekends. They work all through. Can you give up the benefit? No, you have an identity. The suffering person has an identity. That loop creates an identity. I know you will fight me in this, but I'm saying you want it. You thought that's how life is. You're imitating someone. Like, very simple, Asia. If you have a husband, must complain. If you don't complain about your husband, you don't feel like you have a husband. In Asia, we glorify suffering, My mother not my mother doesn't say, but I've heard other mothers, I suffered for you. Why didn't you enjoy him? You're telling me the boy you didn't enjoy, there's nothing that the child gave. You see, the premise is somehow I will be recognized. I will use anything for it. Why don't you actually wake up to be somebody that's worth looking at? We are escaping the demand to actualize ourselves. Like, you want to be an artist, that's 10, 15 years life, To be an artist. Then people say, oh, wow, you did that. Then they recognize you. Anything takes a huge amount of time to get to, then somebody looks at you, wow, how did you do that? Wow. Right? They look at something and they look at you. But now you don't have to do that. Just create a loop, create a suffering, then pour everybody to look at you. So you escape that demand of actualizing you. Do you know what husbands and wives are? They're the passport for you to escape everything. They messed you up. They did it. You are not getting a wife, sir. You are getting your rational why you are miserable because it's her. Then why do you stay with her? No, you are stuck in a loop. And the loop is you are using false means to create a sense of self. Like somebody say, oh, that person. I say, what did he do? What did he create? What did he? No, but he's a good person. How? In what area is he good? Oh, he goes to church every day. He works there? No, but there is a criminal intent behind it. No, I will not do anything. I will not produce anything, but the world must acknowledge me. I think in the West you have a word for it, right? That's the word. Loser. Who asked you to be a loser? Who asked you to be a loser? Where the rest of us spend our lifetime dedicating, honing skill to give something. Do you know how long it takes for an artist to work that a painting he does is worth hanging in a hall? No, but you're too good, you're special, you're amazing. Why? You're inventing this loop. In order to avoid the struggle of self-actualization, we get ourselves into loop and we pretend we cannot get out. There's a benefit. You create an identity. Never create an identity out of suffering. You won't create identity out of glory. If you watch Poor Country, they glorify poor people, you know. They glorify suffering. Who asked you to suffer? I walked 20 stairs, you know, Master. There was a lift there. But if you take the lift, you can't brag about it. But if you have to walk 20 stairs, you have something to say. You are asking me to acknowledge you without merit. That's why the loop is there. If not, you won't have the loop. And people are not stupid, you know. They see a snake, they know how to avoid. A car comes, they know how to walk across. They're pretty smart. How come they're stupid in this? They are not stupid. Think on it.
And please feel free to just subscribe, like, hit the notification button, and share this channel, the YouTube channel, which is the Mental Health Fitness Journey Club. Then I'll also share down there a link on our Facebook group, which is also under the same name, the Mental Health Fitness Journey Club. So let's listen to Oprah Winfrey's interview with closing as we end this month of May in where we create awareness on mental health. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it.